Today we're going to be showing you how to terminate an RJ-45 modular plug, or a mod plug as we call them in the field. To get started, you'll need a length of cable, which you see here that we cut out of one of our 1,000-foot boxes, your modular plugs, and some sort of crimp tool. Today we're using the Klein Tools Passthrough mod crimper. It has your 568B and A wiring diagrams there. In case you don't have it memorized and you need a reminder, we use B standard, so pins 1 and 2 is going to be orange, 3 and 6 is going to be your green, and 4 and 5 is always blue, 7 and 8 is always brown. A pass-through crimper is going to have a blade that trims off the excess wires when you crimp the tool. That's why so many people use the pass-through, because you can get the wires through, make sure everything's good, get the sheathing deep inside the connector. It even has the wiring diagram on the other side. With the pins facing down, you're going to see 1 through 8 from right to left. It even has your pin out for the RJ11, 4-pin and 6-pin connectors. But today we're focused on the 8-pin RJ45 connection or pin out, because it's for Ethernet or internet connectivity. The tool has an area where you can cut and strip. You do not want to score too deeply into the jacket, because you can cut into the copper pairs or wires. So you can use that if you're not familiar with the sensitivity and touch needed or necessary. You don't want to cut into the copper. The plastic piece that you see here is called a star filler. It separates the 4 pairs from one another and reduces crosstalk or interference of the signal among the 4 pairs. Now, if you're not familiar with any of these terms, I suggest that you look them up, because these are things you're going to need to be familiar with in this industry. Another way to strip the jacket off the cable is simply using your snips. You lightly score into the jacket, not cutting through the jacket into the copper, and then from there you can just snap the jacket. It should come apart just like that. Plenum breaks easier than non-plenum, but either way, it's the same principle. Just like they say there are multiple ways to skin a cat, there are multiple ways to strip your cable. Now, instead of cutting that star piece and the ripcord with the snips like we did the other one, you can use flush cutters, pulling the pairs to the outside and then going into the middle so you don't cut into the pairs. And when you compare the left side, which was cut with the flush cutters, and the right side, which was cut with the snips, you can see that the star filler is not protruding past the stripping point. On the right, it is a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's really not going to make a difference. If anything, the more star filler or cross filler, the less crosstalk. Looking back at the diagram of the pin out for B standard, you can see that the orange is 1 and 2 and the brown is 7 and 8. So I like to put the orange on the left and the brown to the right, just to keep them out of the way. Now, the blue pair is going to be the very center pins at pins 4 and 5, and the green pair is going to split out at 3 and 6. So I like to start with the blue pair because it's in the center and it's the only one that goes solid then white. Every other pair goes white and then solid. So I go ahead and get the blue untwisted, smoothed out. You can work it back and forth to get it nice and straight. I don't like to use a screwdriver or any other tool than my hands, because it does have the ability and the potential to stress the copper. And we're looking for maximum performance out of these cables for Ethernet and internet connectivity with speed and communication. So I always say the easy way is not always the best way. With that being said, we bring our attention back to the cable. I'm doing the same thing I did with the blue pair. I'm doing it with the orange and the green and the brown, just getting them smooth, getting them nice and manageable. That way they can go freely and smoothly into the modular plug when the time comes. I'm just using my fingers to work them back and forth gently but firmly enough to where they'll get nice and straight. Make sure you get them in order. I'm holding the base, because once you get them in order, you do not want them to get back out of order going into that plug. So holding the base, I then bring all the wires together, and as one big happy family, I work them back and forth to get them nice and smooth and straight, the way they stay together. At this point, you're going to want to trim all of the wires evenly, giving yourself enough length to work into the mod plug. You don't want to cut it too short. Now, if you don't have pass-throughs, you're going to have to cut the amount perfectly to fit in the plug, because it does not pass through the end. But with pass-throughs, you're going to want to give yourself a good little bit of length. That way, once you get the wires in, you can still hold that back end and keep them in order as they slide through their designated points to line up with those pins that will crimp down into the copper of the cable. Always, always, always check your sheathing or your jacket, making sure that it gets inside that plug to have a nice professional connection. They do make boots that you can slide on, but I do not have that in this video. This is just a tutorial to show you how to do this generally. It's a good idea to do a quick visual inspection and check your pin out before you crimp it, just so you don't have to find out during testing that you miswired it and then you have to re-terminate it anyway. So before you crimp, double check your work. Now it's time to push the plug into the crimp tool. The only way it will go, you really can't mess that up. Just make sure it's seated all the way in and you're putting some pressure behind the cable as you're crimping it. The blade will cut off the excess wires, and then you can perform a visual inspection. There's a little plastic piece that pushes down to hold the jacket once you crimp it, and then you can check and make sure all 8 pins have been crimped into the wires. You can see from the side in the white orange that the copper pin from the plug gets smushed into the copper cable and the wire to make the connection. Once you have both mod plugs terminated, one at each end of the cable, you're then going to want to test the cable at the very least with a basic wire map test to make sure that all of your pins are lined up properly, that they're all crimped properly, and that you have connectivity from end to end. This is a basic wire map tester. You turn it on. You can see that it's reading ID number 1, which is the detachable piece. Once you unplug that, it shows as open, but once you plug it in, it reads the other ID. So now you're good to do a network test on the cable by hitting the network test button. It's showing that it is in fact an ID 1 at the other end and that all 8 pins are crimped and have connectivity from end to end. You can use this measuring feature. It's going to tell you how long each pair is. Now you're looking at the pairs. I just moved to 3 and 6, 4 and 5, 7 and 8. They all show 7 feet. So we're going to call this a 7-foot patch cable that we made and tested. It is good for use.